He's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, covering the NBA and watching the Pacers against the Heat last night. Chris, I want to start where most people won't start, and that is the Pacers' play last night, because that led to the frustration here, I think, with D. Wade. So let me just start with what Indiana did in their game plan. What stood out for you with what they accomplished last night?
Well, they're really, really physical, Dan, and they're, in the era of super teams, teams like Indiana and San Antonio continue to build around complete teams. And they're, number one, like I said, they're physical. They go to Roy Hibbert. They go to David West a lot, an advantage that has become an even bigger one for them now that Chris Bosh is out for the rest of the series. So they pound the ball inside the painted area, and they get high-quality shots with those two guys. But as important, Dan, they look like a bunch of guys that have grown together, and which is really what they've done the last couple of years. They're very comfortable with each other. They know where each other is going to be on the floor at most times. This is a team that clearly has grown up together and plays like it. I just think continuity and chemistry is an important thing in this series, and Indiana has a huge advantage in that category.
Where were you seated last night?
I was along the baseline right next to the Miami bench.
What did you see with Wade and Spoelstra?
Well, they got into it, no question about it. And I think, from what my memory serves, it was because of Wade's shooting, but in one situation where Wade took a shot, missed, and the guy that was defending him, Paul George, got a layup on the other end because Wade didn't get back. And one thing Spoelstra's high on, as most coaches are, is effort. And seeing a sort of a lackadaisical effort on Wade's part there, I'm sure got him going. Wade being, frustrated by whatever he's dealing with, whether it's injuries or something mentally going on with him. He just looked completely checked out in that game, Dan, and his frustration was evident there, and it just boiled over. Now, do I think that Spoelstra and Wade are a problem? I don't, mostly because those two guys have a very long history with each other. It was Spoelstra that was that young assistant coach that worked with Wade when he was younger, worked on his jump shot, was there early in afternoons working with him before games. I think their relationship is okay, that they'll get over this. But Wade, if you're talking about Bosh being out and Wade, who's apparently hurt with some kind of leg injury, being hampered, this is a team that just has no shot, Dan, of winning. I mean, they can't beat an Indiana team with just LeBron and a hampered Dwayne Wade.
But is not having Bosh an ample excuse for the Heat?
I mean, I don't know. I would say yes, because we're now seeing just how important he was offensively. They ran a lot of their offense through him in the low post, Dan, a lot more than I think people gave Bosh credit for. His importance, I think, is more than people gave him credit for. They ran a lot of the offense through him, and not having him, I'm seeing a team that's trying to reinvent itself on the fly. I mean, Dan, Dexter Pittman started last night. Dexter Pittman played 300 minutes total in the regular season during the year. I mean, he's not a guy that's in the rotation. They're having to go away from any kind of discernible low post presence to just run the offense exclusively through LeBron and Wade. I mean, they really are, like I said, reinventing themselves on the fly in this situation. And I think that, losing Bosh, you hate to call it an excuse for losing this series, but for not being a championship team, I think that's a credible reason.
But why didn't anybody see this when Bosh went down, that this is what was going to happen, or this could happen, that the Pacers do have a chance to pull off? Now, it may not be a shocker because Bosh is out, but it's certainly a big surprise.
Well, I tell you, Dan, I think a lot of people gave Indiana a chance to win this series coming in. I mean, this was one of those, when I was filling out the playoff bracket before the postseason started, this is one of those series that I completely agonized over, because I thought that Indiana was very underrated going into the playoffs. They flew under the radar as the third seed, but they had been one of the stronger finishers to the regular season of any team that was out there. And as we've seen over the last decade, size wins. Whether you're talking about Boston, the Lakers, San Antonio, Detroit even, teams that have good size tend to be the teams that win championships. And Indiana not only has great size, but they have waves of size. And it wasn't just Hibbert and David West that were doing the damage against Miami in the paint. It was Tyler Hansborough. It was Lou Amundsen. It was just big after big that Indiana rolled out there that ultimately wore down Miami. I mean, we saw a first half where Miami kept the game close. It was a tie game going into halftime. It looked like it was anybody's game, but the way Indiana wears you down physically, the way they just beat you down, much the same way Memphis did to teams in the regular season, that pays dividends in the third quarter and in the second half in general. When teams that have to play small against them, like Miami does, they wind up getting worn down, and those jump shots are flatter. The drives are coming up a little short. They resort to floaters instead of taking the ball to the rim. Indiana has just a way of punishing people that I think is going to be very effective for them, not just in this series, but for the rest of the playoffs.
Are you calling for the Pacers to shock the world?
I think the Pacers win it. I think it's their series to lose right now. I think the confidence in them is swelling at an all-time high right now. I mean, Frank Vogel, who I think is an incredibly underrated coach in this league, he's instilled in this team from day one of training camp not to believe that we're a team of next year, but not to believe that because of our youth we aren't entitled to the right to win right now. I think just now this team is starting to believe it. I mean, they have some veterans, Dan, on this team that believed it all along. David West, played deep into the playoffs with New Orleans. George Hill was with San Antonio, making the playoffs for the last 3 years. But guys like Hibbert and Hansborough and Paul George and Darren Collison, they needed to hear that. And I think just finally, after winning a series against Orlando and being to this point against Miami, they're starting to think they deserve to be here. And they think they're the favorites right now. And I think they win on Sunday, and I think they have a great chance to close this series out in 5.
What about the Lakers' chances with back-to-back games with Oklahoma City?
That's going to be tough because I was at the Oklahoma City game on Wednesday, and it was amazing, or really, I guess amazing is not the word, unbelievable watching Kobe Bryant just implode the way he did in those final 2 minutes. I mean, he can talk all he wants about how, the Thunder made great plays and they gambled defensively and they took risks, but the simple fact of it is Kobe shot them out of that game, and he turned the ball over in a critical time. That was their game to win, and if they had won that game, they would have been able to turn the momentum of that series. They would have been able to get inside Oklahoma City's head again and made them think, well, maybe we're not as good as we think we are. Going back to L.A. with a chance to seize control of the series, they blew a huge opportunity there, Dan, and I think this back-to-back, it just kills them. I mean, they're an old team already, but having played a 7-game series going into this series against Denver, I just think all the cards are stacked against them right now, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Oklahoma City finish this thing off in 4.
Final question for you, and it is hypothetical. Let's say the Lakers go out quickly. Let's say the Heat are eliminated. Which team is more likely, hypothetically now, to make a big move in the offseason?
I think there's no question it's the Lakers. I think if they lose this series, Pau Gasol will be in another uniform next year. Now, I don't know where he's going to go, but obviously they tried to trade him before last year, and now with an extra $19 million off his contract, it becomes more favorable, and he'll be more desirable. I think he's the first guy to go. I think the Andrew Bynum-Dwight Howard rumor is going to be revisited. We all know that Dwight Howard is finished in Orlando at this point, and I think that's something we're going to hear a lot about. The Heat, I mean, they're going to have a lot to think about. I mean, they blew through New York in the first round. They look like the favorites coming into the second round. And losing Bosch obviously has been a crippling blow for this team. Now, do they need to blow it up and try to reinvent themselves next year? Or can they supplement that roster with some of the big free agents that are out there? And this could be a decent crop of free agents, Dan. You've got guys like Kidd and Nash and all these good point guards, or Raymond Felton maybe, that could be out there in the market that might be willing to take less money to play in Miami. They could get another big man out there to supplement the front court. I mean, there are ways for Miami to get better without just blowing this whole thing up and trading one of the big three. So I look at the Lakers as being the team that makes the significant move this offseason.
Talk to you next week. Thank you, Chris.
All right, Dan.
Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated. Good stuff from him.